As people come in, do share out the space. We're just gonna hang for a little bit, get the room to fill up, and then we will kick off. I believe we're supposed to have Voxy Braid. Is that George or is that someone else?
Yeah, it will be me.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect. Sweet. Good morning, my good sir. George will be kicking us off with some brief remarks, perhaps things to think about. So share out the space. I don't know. Let's pull up the global time zone map here. See what
Seven.
people are doing.
we- We've got George, and then Nils is going to come up, and then we're going to transition, I think, to the Catalyst Circle. Um, uh, as that happens, I just want to give a super big hug and shout out to, um, obviously, my best friend, Archangel Bob, but Fulter, and I'm not going to say that name correctly, and Bertino. Rock and roll. I'm gonna go look at the NFT real quick, and I'm gonna get really unfrustrated and very excited and happy about this because while I just woke up,
You should be
the con.
excited.
Oh yeah, it's coming back real quick. It is indeed, and I haven't made coffee yet either. So
You should make coffee. Apparently, half of the US should maybe, well, less than half should maybe be up.
or
Uh,
go to
Lon
bed.
London it should be midday there. Tokyo should be dinner time. All of Africa supposedly should be up. Um,
We understand Western time, Western interpretation of time, sir.
we might not. We might not. Um, yeah, welcome again. As you come in, just share the space. We'll give it a couple more minutes and then we'll kick off. I don't see Niels in the house. Quasar, if you wanna hit him in the DM.
I will indeed.
Uh,
Yesterday was his first time on a or first time speaking. So that was exciting yesterday during the space that we had with him.
that was exciting. I was surprised.
So was I. And if I'm not mistaken, it might be George's first time speaking. Um,
It is. It is Quasar. Yes.
all of the magical first that we experienced together.
Absolutely.
So to share the space, make sure you use the little speech bubble on the bottom right. Um, share share that tweet. Um, you can retweet it and add a quote if you like, and so forth. Oh man.
Oh, well, Bertino, did you happen to take a look and see if you can stream this? And obviously, I know you can't speak right now, but give me a thumbs up or sign about recording it with OBS. If that's the case, then we can help Lido feel better about his Sunday morning. I've got the Sunday morning API Blues, Twitter.
API Blues, indeed. Why? Twitter is always freaking buggy. Niels, welcome. Feel free to come up. I believe you're queued up after George. So feel free to come up and hang.
And Lido, if you'd like to invite Hard Fork as co-host, I'm going to switch there for a bit.
That sounds like a risky proposal, Quasar.
No risk, no reward.
No risk, no reward, indeed, I suppose. I invited the Hard Fork. I'm sure by the time this event is over, I will truly come to understand what the Hard Fork is. I can't say that I really understand. I've been told what it is, but yeah.
Good morning. Good morning.
Niels, good morning. 2 for 2.
Woohoo!
Yes, yesterday was your first space. Today is your
I
second
mean,
space.
what's happening? What's happening?
One can help but wonder what's gonna happen tomorrow. Yeah, we're just sort of hanging for a little bit. I think in 2 minutes we'll hand it over to George and we'll start this thing. So as people come in, share out the space. George will be kicking us off, and then Niels will be up.
Cool.
How's your morning, Niels? Is it morning for you? Where are you?
It's 1 o'clock. Amsterdam.
Amsterdam.
It's rainy, but yeah, I'm happy.
Nice.
Been thinking about my talk and thinking about yesterday with the ADAO roundtable, and I don't know, working through some bugs. I'm usually used to present with visuals, so that was a bit of a obstacle for me yesterday. But I made a bit of more of a story today, so let's see if that works.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, Twitter Space can be challenging if you need to add visual. But there is the Jumbotron, so the little space up top. I've seen people get creative with that space.
Yeah, I have to find a way to blend the two together.
Well, my friend, you've got about 15 minutes or so to put the final I's and the final T's on your challenge, on your solution. But George, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? The mic is yours. Let's
absolutely.
get this show on the road.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lido, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody who's listening. So what I'd like to spend a few minutes talking is about this connection between democracy and Web3. And I'd like to begin by just introducing this concept of mutual ownership organizations. You may be already familiar with those kinds of businesses, because I think there is this enormous potential and capability of having Web3 technologies really accelerate the growth of mutual ownership organizations. And they've been with us for like centuries. Just to give you a little bit of some stats of size, let's talk a little bit about mutual insurance in the US. There are companies that are mutually owned by the policymakers that have $2 trillion under total assets, employing something like 226,000 people and serving 356 million policyholders. So we're talking about a huge number of businesses that are mutually owned. And there's other organizations as well. Think of cooperatives, for example, but also think of use cases or situations where communities need to manage commons, fisheries perhaps, or a forest, or a mine that belongs to the community. So in those kinds of problems, in those kinds of cases, what you have is you need a different kind of governance, right? So it's not a centralized governance; it's a more of decentralized corporate governance. And I think this is why I'd like to speak about, the opportunities that exist in utilizing and implementing Web3 technologies, Cardano blockchain, in those kinds of cases. And just to add one more thing about mutual ownership organizations, which I think is very, very important, is not that not only they serve the interest of their members, right, which are not necessarily shareholders, right? So in the case of insurance companies, there's the policyholders. So all income is distributed among the policyholders, right? It's not only that, but they are the most sustainable and stable and resilient type of human business organization that has ever existed. The average age of those organizations is 97 years. Okay, and there are organizations that exist for the last 200 years that are mutually ownership organizations. So again, I'm presenting this because I believe that using DAOs and Web3 technology is essential. I think, and it's a great match, if you like, between what those organizations have been doing all along and what they can do in the future if they're organized around DAOs. But here's the problem with DAOs, right? I'm getting now into the problem. So DAOs right now in Web3 provide an excellent way of organizing voting, but that is not enough for those organizations. Just having transparency and auditing of votes to take decisions, it's simply not enough. Another element is important, is essential for those organizations to exist, and that element is what is generally referred to as participatory governance. And that's where the concept of democracy comes into play. Okay? So what is participatory governance, and what's the relationship with democracy, and what is the problem that it's trying to solve? Let me spend just half a minute just discussing this, because I think this is very important. You see, the problem with representation, and there's a lot of representation currently in DAOs, there's a lot of sort of centralized ways of governing decentralized systems, which for me is a paradox. See, the problem with voting for someone else to take decisions for you is usually sort of known as the so-called principal agent problem, right? And essentially means that me, who votes for you to represent me, I'm the principal, you're my agent, our interests may not align, and they usually don't. And that, in the long run, creates problems of trust. So the big problem that I think that is already evident, but it will become more evident in the future with DAO, as DAOs are used by those mutual ownership organizations that need participatory governance, is that we don't have the right tools for participatory governance right now in place. So essentially what you have is DAOs that are decentralized plutocracies, not decentralized democracies. And I think this is a problem that is worth addressing. Definitely, this is a problem that we are trying to address at Voxiberate, the company that I founded. How can we transform DAOs from decentralized plutocracies to decentralized democracies? And the way to do that, there's various ways to do that, I suppose. But one of the ways to do that is to introduce participatory governance, which demands deliberation. So let me again introduce now another new term in the lexicon of DAO, which is deliberation. Now, deliberation is different from having a conversation using Discord or Twitter and so on. Deliberation is a structured conversation where people who may have different opinions, different experiences, are having a civilized conversation about them with a purpose, and the purpose is to finally arrive in some kind of compromise. And this is extremely important in everything that I just mentioned. And that is why participatory governance and deliberative democracy are important to govern those mutual ownership organizations. And in fact, if you look into the literature, if you look, for example, in cooperatives, okay, there are the so-called Rochdale cooperative principles, which are the guidelines for setting up a successful cooperative. And if you looked into those guidelines, you'll see that one of the major guidelines is to create participatory process for decisions. Because for members to trust those organizations, those future DAOs, if you like, they need to solve the principal agent problem. And the only way to solve that is to be yourself a participant in the governance. And the same holds again for what I mentioned before about communities managing commons. And the common can be a physical common, as I said, fisheries, mines, forests, but it can also be a digital common, right? Think of, for example, data. Think of data unions, right? Think of knowledge, of algorithms, think of experiences, think of cities, of digital cities, smart cities, collecting data and developing new sort of innovative ideas. All that IP, all that knowledge that ultimately should belong to everybody because everybody feeds that knowledge through the data needs to be governed somehow. And one extremely fantastic framework for managing commons is one that was developed by the late Elinor Ostrom, the economist, the first woman actually that won the Nobel of Economics. If you have never heard of her, write the name down, Ostrom, and look her up. Her principles in managing commons, one of them is create participatory procedures. So, to finish off my sort of introduction and, if you like, my statement that we need participatory governance for DAOs in order for DAOs to be adopted more widely by society and indeed to be adopted by mutual ownership organizations, cooperatives, and community-based organizations that manage community commons, we definitely need deliberation and we definitely need participatory democracy. And that's exactly, as I said, what we do in Vuxiberate. The way we do it is we borrowed an idea from political science called citizen assembly, which essentially means selecting by sortition, by chance, a representative group of the community and have them deliberate a proposal or crowdsource an idea or fulfill some sort of task that the community assigns to them and use that output as a way to inform the wider community about what decision they should make. So that's what